A theory is an explanation of how information and observations are organized and relate to one another. And when we look at theory in early childhood education, we wonder why it is so important. So let's begin looking at the process of how theory works. Theories begin with a question or a problem, usually by teachers or researchers, and these problems lead to a hypothesis. And this is a tentative explanation for what's going on. So from that point, we start to inquire about this problem and we collect data and see really what are the variables of the problem in the early childhood process or classroom. That research is then used to form a theory. This theory will either prove or disprove the hypothesis. Now, from the theory, we have to collect more research. And again, this theory is not book research. We can study books and old research, but really the kind of quality research we need is to look specifically at the learners, take notes, write down your observations, try different situations for your theory. And through this research, we can come up with a proven theory, and this proven theory then gets put into practice. And when we have a new theory put into practice, it is the teacher's job to see if this theory still proves true in all situations. And the word that we use is universal, because for a theory to be universal, it means it works with all learners, regardless of their socioeconomic status, their ability, the learning environment. And so we need to see if this theory is only specific to certain categories or if it is a universal theory for everybody. The purpose of this then, as you can see the arrow goes back to the light bulb, is to begin to question or find a problem with the theory. And it's a circular process that is constantly ongoing. You can see that most of the theories that we discuss were disproven at some point in child development history. One popular theory is the maturationist theory, and this is the theory that teachers needed to wait until children were ready for experiences to be effective. And we know that this is sometimes true. If you think back last week, you had the little slide with the crayons on, and I asked you to make a connection, and it said that there are times when you try to teach a child something and they don't get it, and then suddenly one day they do get it. And you haven't really changed what you're doing. You just see that they were suddenly ready for it. That would lead to the theory of maturation. But we see that this has been disproved many times, and more recently we're seeing that students can be ready for experiences we thought they weren't traditionally ready for, like reading and writing, some physical sports, the competitive sports especially. We see children all of a sudden being more prepared because the teachers are teaching them better and teaching them in more developmentally appropriate ways. And so many times it's not maturation, but it's the part of the teacher and meeting their needs to teach the skills that might have been avoided prior to this time. So we see this maturation theory is constantly getting disproved. One area we do see it kind of sticking with our young learners is the red shirting. We see a lot of parents red shirting their kindergartners, and what this means is they hold them out for a year and let them start a year older. This does usually work well just because the more mature the learner, the more they are prepared to sit in the academic classroom, especially since our classrooms are even more academic than they've ever been. We see this theory is especially true for boys. Young boys struggle to sit in traditional classrooms, especially if their teachers aren't teaching in developmentally appropriate ways. They're not getting frequent breaks. They're not having active chances to move throughout the day. I, on the other hand, pushed my 6-year-old to skip kindergarten. She has an October birthday, and she jumped over kindergarten. Basically, she went to a pre-K last year, and I homeschooled her through the kindergarten curriculum. And she just was more than ready for a half-day kindergarten experience that our district would have provided. So we see that maturation theory proves true for some children, but is not universal. And then it goes back into this circular process. Now, you may wonder why we would study theory, because it's constantly changing. And some reasons why it's important is because it helps teachers understand child development and learning. Specifically, it helps you set and evaluate goals to see if they are achievable for children of certain ages. It also gives you an interpretation of why a child acts a certain way. There are predictable patterns for age that would require intervention. I know at one point my youngest is very strong-willed, and I went to her pediatrician for one of her visits, and I said, I think she might have some sort of anxiety disorder or be oppositional defiant because she keeps throwing these tantrums. She's my third daughter, so my other daughters didn't act like her, and I was quite concerned. And the pediatrician said, she's a 2-year-old. All 2-year-olds are oppositional defiant to varying degrees. This is developmentally how she should be acting. And it really put me at ease that she would outgrow her behavior, and she really did. And so we see that the research shows what a 2-year-old does and what a 6-year-old does. They're going to look different, and we shouldn't be concerned that a child needs intervention without using this information as a guide. So this is something that our theories provide. Theories also provide predictable sequences of development and also help us plan our curriculum to meet the developmental needs of our learners. They help us predict the topics and experiences that will be interesting and meaningful to children at specific ages, and it helps us understand how a child's social and cultural contexts affect their learning and development. And we're going to move into that specifically on the next slide. But these theories are important, and they don't have to be theories that are even published. You as a teacher can do your own hypothesis, research, inquiry to guide your own practice. So we see this as a practice that is important for the education of our young children.